I'd like to talk to you about a different way to kind of understand and perceive the relationship between intelligence and processing skills and education. Think of a little formula. In the formula, we have I to the power of P plus E equals F. All right, what that represents is I is intelligence, your innate intelligence, to the power of your processing abilities, plus your education determines equals your function. Okay, so let's talk about that. And this conceptually may be a good way for many of you to understand this. And just so you know, we have a whole, put together a whole construct of thought, and that shows how we take in information and utilize information and the pieces involved in thinking and how that changes through our lives. So we'll be doing that in the future, but for now, see if this model helps you. All right, intelligence as in innate intelligence, which I don't believe is anything anyone can measure. It is what is. So your innate intelligence to the power of your processing speed, all right, and your processing ability. Processing, in this term, we're talking about short-term memory, working memory. How much can we get in and how much we can manipulate. So our innate intelligence to the power of how much information we can take in and manipulate, plus education. And let's think in terms of education as what you know, not what you were exposed to, what was in your curriculum, but what actually went into your brain, what actually gets into your long-term memory. All right, your real education. All right, all that together determines where you can function, or if you will, how you can think. All right, so again, innate intelligence, what you were born with, if you will. You're processing your short-term memory, working memory, which our NACD families are all familiar with, all working with to advance, be your kid going from a 0 to a 1 or a 14 to a 15. Plus education being the information you have in long-term memory. And just a little bit in terms of how these pieces interact. Your knowledge base, the information you have in long-term memory, isn't just what you know. It actually affects what you learn. And it affects what you learn by affecting the intensity with which you take in new information. All right, what that means is that even though something is new, you've never seen it before, you've never heard it before, if your brain gives that information credibility and intensity, it changes the impact of that on your brain. For example, if most people look at a rock they've never seen before in their life, the intensity of that input is pretty low, and if you will, pretty insignificant. So that rock didn't impact your brain much, and it didn't do anything to change your long-term memory. If you were a geologist and you saw that rock, and that rock had significant information in it for you just looking at it, then the intensity of that information for your brain as a geologist would be dramatically greater. I mean, if it was something special, that geologist might remember that rock for the rest of their entire lives with one exposure to that rock. So what we have in our knowledge base, and the more information we have in long-term memory, the more impact, the more significant, the greater intensity of all new information that we take into our brains. Right? That's a very big deal. One of the things I look at in my construct is that most people after the early 20s, sequential processing begins to deteriorate a bit. But you keep adding information to your long-term memory. And, depending on how you want to define terms, you do get older, I think, and generally wiser because you have more information to draw on. And you can manipulate more pieces of information because you have more information. All right, you may not be, if you will, as smart as you were, when you were in your early 20s or 30s. But because you have really built that long-term memory and made association between information, you really can perhaps think better and are wiser for all that information. So the significance of all this is the goal is to function better. All right, the goal for your old child is for them to function better. The goal for your teenager is to get them to function better. Our goals as adults should be to function better. And it's very critical and important to understand that we can impact those pieces. We can't change our innate intelligence. That's there. That is what it is. But we can build on our processing skills. We can continue to educate ourselves. And we can continue to improve our function. Thanks.